Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, it's the Journalist Roundtable. Once again, we'll take a look at the week's top stories, including an interesting twist into a call for the investigation of a state lawmaker who notified people about the location of ice raids. That's next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your public television station.
Well, good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Rick DeBrule filling in for Ted Simons. It is Friday, and of course that means it is time for the Journalist Roundtable. Joining us tonight, we have Jim Small from the Arizona Mirror, Mark Brody from KJZZ, and Dennis Welch of Arizona's Family. And it's kind of the dog days of summer. We don't have an awful lot going on, but we had to dig kind of deep here. But we have a number of interesting things that are going on. And we're going to start by talking about the Attorney General, Kris Mayes, who, there's been a call to investigate a state senator, Annalise Ortiz, about her spreading the news about ICE raids. And some folks at the legislature believe that was wrong. And so they asked Kris Mayes to investigate it. She said no. And now the Pima County attorney is stepping up and saying, I'm happy to do it. And Kris Mayes is saying,
you can't do that because you don't have the authority. I mean, when this comes out, I mean, it sounds to me, call me cynical, it sounds like a county attorney trying to make a bit of a political name for himself. This always seemed like, at least attorneys I talked to, seems like a bit of a thin argument to try to go after Senator Ortiz for getting in the way of ICE doing what they're doing, because she posted some stuff on social media. I mean, she has made the claim, what's the difference between that and posting activities in the neighborhood on like those neighborhood chat groups and whatnot? And again, attorneys I've talked to said that's a pretty thin argument here. But if you have someone like, I believe it's Brad Miller down at Pinal County, you want to make a name for yourself, hey, well, go ahead, raise your hand, you're Republican, you're going to get some run on this. Because remember, this all started with Senate President Warren Peterson, getting upset when he saw Senator Ortiz, post this kinds of stuff. And you can't forget that Senator Peterson also running for a major office, also trying to spin get a little political yardage out of all of this too by going after a Democratic and one of the more progressive Democratic senators.
Yeah. The phrase I kept hearing from both Republicans and Democrats was political theater.
In other words, it's less about whether the investigation will happen and more about, once again, as you said, perhaps making a name for himself.
Yeah, and it's not outside the realm of possibility that President Peterson could hire Brad Miller to do this investigation or have some role in an investigation for the legislature if he so chooses. But I think to Dennis's point, like, a lot of lawyers are saying there's not a lot of there when it comes to having Senator Ortiz having done something wrong.
Doesn't, though, Attorney General Kris Mayes run the risk of having, done this so many times, gone up against the legislature? The legislature starts going, you don't really need all that money to fund that office over there.
Well, sure, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I think that's possibilities existed the whole time, right? Like, that's not a new possibility. And Attorney General Mayes wrote this, really scathing letter to the county attorney in Pinal County. It basically said, hey, I caught your interview on that right-wing radio show. Why don't you explain to us who in the legislature has talked to you about this? Who, what you think what authorization you have to serve as a special prosecutor? Because, spoiler alert, Arizona law and the Constitution does not have a provision for that. There is not a way for you to do this. You live in Pinal County. This is an issue in Maricopa County. Assuming there even was an issue, you have absolutely no grounds or authority to do this, and you really should explain yourself. Taken an oath of office to uphold the Constitution and the laws of Arizona, and here you are talking about doing things that violate both of them pretty blatantly.
On the flip side, Dennis, why not, if you're Kris Mayes, why not say, I'm happy to do an investigation? Bottom line is, if she believes that there's no harm, no foul, why not go ahead and say, sure, we're happy to do it?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I don't think she wants to engage in this kind of political theater and go down that kind of road. I think, Kris Mayes has shown that, she will go after people, I think, regardless of party, she has shown, and that she's not going to engage in this kind of political theater moving down. I think that's what she wants to try to avoid here because, again, not a lot of there with a case like this. I mean, Senate President can get as mad as he wants. They can make any kinds of threats they want. You said that maybe Chris Mays runs the risk of the legislature coming back next year and cutting funding. Well, good luck with that if you want to go ahead and do that. Good luck trying to explain that to your voters why you cut the top law enforcement agency in the state. Because remember, Republicans are always tough on crime. Why would you go ahead and cut the funding to the county, to the state attorney?
Especially for Warren Peterson, who is, you alluded to him running for higher office, he is running for Attorney General. Yeah. He wants to take on Chris Mays. So, I mean, of course, we have a lot of politics that's just at play here. Oh, yeah. But I think it's really important, to just talk about exactly what it is that Senator Annalise Ortiz did that kind of got these Republicans up in arms, and in particular got the libs of TikTok on Twitter, on X, outraged. And that's where this whole thing started. She went onto Instagram and said, hey, there are ICE agents outside of an elementary school right now that are staging outside of an elementary school in my district. That's, and it was essentially a warning to the community to say, hey, you might want to be careful around here. These are, federal officers doing something in public that has been well covered everywhere across the country, including in the Phoenix area. And that's what her supposed crime is, I guess, going on social media and saying, hey, this thing is happening on our street corner in front of our elementary school. Maybe you should be careful. Yeah, that's it.
I think that is important to remind people why she was doing what she was doing. I mean, this was the second day of school for this school. And I think a lot of parents would be interested to know, regardless of where you live, if there was a heavy law enforcement presence at the school, regardless of wherever you are in the valley. Wouldn't you want to know about that?
But I think the argument is she was telling people who could potentially be arrested not to go there. So, the flip side is to say, okay, I see drug dealers out there. Should I go out and warn them that, the police might be coming? And I mean, that's the extreme opposite side of this.
Well, and the argument that Senator Ortiz has made is that this is no different than like if you use the app Waze to get where you're going. If there's police, trying to catch speeders, it will tell you, and you can say on the app they're still there. She said, what's the difference between what I did and what people are doing on that app? Like, you're trying to prevent people from getting caught by law enforcement, so which is pretty much what I was doing as well.
So you mentioned the term political theater, and when we talk about Chris Mays, it's important to point out that in the past year, she has sued the Trump administration 25 times. So, I mean, there is an argument that some people are going to say that it's like, well, you're picking and choosing what you want to do because you think this is making more hay for you over here.
Yeah, we're a little bit over half through the first half of the year. She's averaging almost a lawsuit a week. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I mean, she's signing on to a lot of these lawsuits, challenging a lot of what was coming out of the administration. And interestingly enough, I do know from some reporting I've done and spoken with some people in the office, they were preparing for this contingency well before Donald Trump won the election, well before all this, like, what if they were preparing for the what if he does win, what are we going to do as Democratic attorneys general of the country? And they were planning to put up a fight like this, and they have followed through on that preparation, are challenging this administration on a lot of what they want to do. It's a battle, oddly enough, of federal authority versus states' rights. And I think every one of us here are old enough to remember when states' rights was a Republican issue. That was a big-time Republican issue. I remember, Governor Brewer always saying, "I'm a states' rights kind of gal," this kind of thing. But it's kind of flipped everything on its head, hasn't it?
And Jim, since you're the official retribution guy, I'll go to you again. What about getting on the bad side of a president who seems to be pretty willing to go to the Department of Justice and use that as a tool, as a weapon?
Well, I mean, Chris Mays clearly, that's not a concern that's driving her decisions, right? And I think that's obvious by the fact that she's been a part of these coalitions of, usually somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 states, depending on the lawsuit and how the states are affected, that she's signed on to all of these different lawsuits. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure that is something that they've thought about and that they have tried to, work on contingency plans for whatever might come down from D.C. But obviously, that's not something that's guiding her, and I think that they've made the choice from a political standpoint as well, that this is something that's going to play well. She has to stand for re-election in 2026, and they've obviously, their calculus is that these things are I think both right to do to defend Arizona's interests, and also are not going to harm her politically going into the next campaign.
But if you're a Republican voter, you're saying, you're taking my money and you're suing the president I voted for. And are you wasting my money in doing that?
Well, that's probably going to be something she's going to have to explain in the next election. Obviously, as a she did not exactly win by a landslide when she won her race. A statewide Democrat will need some Republicans and Republican-leaning independents to vote for them to win. So she's going to have to explain. And we've heard her say, I'm not signing on to every lawsuit that the Democratic attorneys general are putting forth. I think to Dennis's point, there was a lot of preparation. There have been some cases that she has not signed Arizona onto. What she is arguing is that I'm signing on to the cases where I believe that Arizona is harmed, where it's something that is a violation of the Constitution, and she believes that she's on solid ground on those. And I think that's going to be the argument. To the extent that that becomes a campaign issue, I think that's probably going to be at least part of the argument she makes on the campaign trail.
We've mentioned Senate President Warren Peterson's name a couple times already. Time to mention it again. He has made it really clear that he is unhappy with this particular television station and what happened during the last election. And I think we need a little bit of context. And who's willing to tell the story?
Oh, I get that. I get to unravel this.
You live in the
one.
television world.
Yeah, I live in the television world. This goes back to 2022, the gubernatorial campaign, and some of the televised debate, or not the debate that didn't really happen. Warren Peterson is unhappy with ASU President Michael Crow. He's unhappy with PBS because they gave, correct me if I'm wrong, they gave Governor Hobbs time.
Well, initially there was supposed to be a debate,
yes.
and Governor Hobbs said, "I won't debate Kari Lake on the air."
No.
And then normally it would have simply said, "Okay, Kari Lake, you have the opportunity to be on television." And the question was, who was manipulating the behind the scenes to say, "Will you do that?" She ended up not doing it. Katie Hobbs gets to be on television all by herself, and there's a question as to how that came to be.
Yeah, and the rules were like, if you say you're not going to do the debate, then the other person gets basically.
The other person says they will.
They get free time.
They get free time on the airtime, and that did not happen. So we saw some reporting done by Stacey Barchanger in the Republic about the back and forth behind the scenes of what happened there that raised some questions about why some of the decisions that were made. And Warren Peterson's looking at this saying, I want an investigation. I want people to be looking at it, and maybe that the broadcast license should be taken away from PBS.
Right, not just an investigation, an investigation by the FCC.
Yes.
Jim, I mean, it wasn't like this came to light very easily. I mean, this was a result of public records requests that took quite a while.
Yeah, and I think it was obviously a sticky situation. I mean, at the time, and it was a mess, and a lot of fighting and public accusations between ASU and between the Clean Elections Commission, which hosts the debates, and between the campaigns and the candidates and all of it. And yeah, obviously this was not something that was the information that did not come out easily. I mean, we're now 3 years past this, and it's just now kind of coming out and coming to light. And I think that, I think it's interesting to see kind of what went into how they went from a scheduled debate to a canceled debate to what they ended up with.
And some of the emails they got, and correct me if I'm wrong, the emails they got showed that they had actually brought up the fact of Kari Lake's election denialism was kind of a factor in some of this, and which really.
So it wasn't just that they were saying we're not going to give it to you for whatever reason. No. There was. Some people would call it a political agenda, but there was an ideal situation in terms of what they were trying to achieve and what voice they didn't want to hear.
Yeah, and it is interesting here because, again, those election denial claims are unsubstantiated over and over in courts of law and their own audits and whatnot. But Kari Lake was the nominee for a major political party here. Should that have even been a consideration to be bringing that up on why she should not have been, allowed this or that? It's an interesting question because you start talking about PBS, you start talking about ASU, you talk about some public funding. ASU is a publicly funded institution. It's an interesting question why that was even brought up at that point.
Well, and you talked about political bias. I mean, that's pretty much the claim that Warren Peterson is making, is that by giving Katie Hobbs an opportunity to come on and do a one-on-one interview when the rules pretty clearly stated that should not have happened, the Peterson and the other critics, mostly Republicans who are criticizing this, are saying that it was almost like the thumb was being put on the scale for this election.
Okay. Let's move into the education world. This past week there was a ruling about the way schools are funded. And this is another complex lawsuit that's been working its way. Who wants to raise their hand and give the background on this?
Yeah, I could talk about this. So this is a lawsuit from 2017. I mean, we're 8 years into this lawsuit now, and we finally got a trial court ruling on it. But essentially what it says is that Arizona is unconstitutionally paying for school maintenance and school construction.
Not paying enough.
Not paying enough, correct. That the state is dramatically, by billions of dollars, underfunding school repairs and new school construction. And this is an issue that stretches back much further than that. That stretches back to the 1980s when the lawsuit, I think that has a court ruling, Arizona Supreme Court ruling in 1994, that has its roots back in the 1980s, because we have 4 decades really had this problem where essentially the state is not living up to its constitutional requirement to have a general and uniform school system, which the Supreme Court has interpreted to mean, no, you need to make sure that schools have the same access to money for the basics, for the things that they're supposed to have. So that way, whether a student goes to school in Yuma or in Flagstaff or in Phoenix or in Casa Grande, that they're going to have access to the same basics. And the trial court, after a 2-week trial that took place earlier this summer, came back and said, yeah, look, the state is not doing what it's supposed to do. It has never done what it's supposed to do, even after that 1994 ruling. It continues to dramatically and grossly underfund schools. And the result is that we have, billions and billions of dollars at a conservatively, like $3 or $4 billion that's been underfunded, and essentially teed this thing up for an appeal, which is absolutely where this is going to go.
And one of the interesting things that really stuck with me as you started doing the amount of time, this 8 years, is kids graduating high school this coming year. 4th grade when this lawsuit was started. That entire time they've been going to school in underfunded school systems at a time when you're trying to teach Johnny to read and write in a school, where building may be falling down, where they may have old buses. This is the kind of money we're talking about.
No air
pay for
conditioning,
buses,
things like
no
that.
air conditioning. And you're trying to teach kids in this environment, and it's been such a long time coming. I'm just struck by these kids have gone through a majority of their school in the K-12 school system, in an underfunded school system like this.
What is the financial impact of this, do we think?
Potentially billions of dollars. I mean, that's
That the state will have to come up with.
that the state will have to come up with. Yeah.
To fund for, not just moving forward, but will they have to fund retroactively as well?
That I don't know. I mean, I would assume if a school is falling down, if it has repairs, if it has a leaky roof, if it has buses that don't work, whether or not that happened 5 years ago, it's probably still happening now in some cases at least. So I'm not entirely sure how that would all break down. Some of that we might have to wait to see what comes down on the ultimate appeals, because I think to Dennis's point, it's been going on for 8 years. It's going to keep going on because the House Speaker and Senate President have said they will appeal, and who knows how long that'll take.
And it's going to be very interesting, because I don't know how easy it will be for this legislature to solve this problem. Because remember, you want to raise taxes, which is probably the simplest solution to start. If this ends up going in the school's direction and their way, you can raise some taxes to pay whatever you have to retroactively and to fund moving forward. But remember, you got to get 2/3 majority now in the legislature to vote for a tax increase, which is not impossible, but I would say it's highly unlikely.
Which kind of raises the question, you wonder if maybe somebody's going to try to put a ballot measure on, kind of like what we've done with Prop 100 during the Great Recession when Governor Brewer got the legislature to refer that to the ballot for a sales tax for education. You wonder, because it's really hard, especially with Republicans controlling the legislature, it's hard to imagine a 2/3.
Yeah, 2/3. They're going to have to get a bipartisan bill that everybody's going to agree on, which we know is very complicated. All right. This past weekend in Iowa, one of our 2 Arizona senators, Ruben Gallego, was visiting the Iowa State Fair. And call me crazy, but I don't think he was there for the deep-fried Twinkies or the really good corn that they have there. Let's talk about what's happening with Ruben Gallego, and why was he in Iowa this past week?
Well, I mean, it depends on who you ask, right? I mean, it might be the same answer to why was he in Pennsylvania.
I think we only have opinions.
He was in Pennsylvania a little while back as well. I mean, there's been a lot of speculation of what Senator Gallego's next move is going to be. People have asked him, are you going to run for president? I think he said, I'm not ready to think about that yet.
The standard non-committal answer.
But showing up at the Iowa State Fair is not a great way to douse those rumors.
Which, by the way, they're not the first caucus for the Democrats. Anyway, that's South Carolina, by the way. I grew up in Iowa. It's my home state. I was glad to see he was paying attention to my home state. It was interesting. He had an op-ed published in the state's largest newspaper before he arrived. Look, it's all upside for him. He says he's out there trying to, get support and get momentum behind Democrats as they head into the midterm. He's not saying whether he's running for president. I mean, he could very well be running for president and doing both can be true at this point, but it's all upside for him because he goes out there, he gets his name out there. I mean, there was a national piece on CBS that profiled his visit to Iowa, and I think like a lot of Democrats right now just put themselves out there, put themselves in a position. Maybe something happens here over the next couple of years, and then you become a top tier or a serious contender for the White House, or maybe a vice presidential pick. I think it's all upside for him,
especially at a
politically.
Especially at a time when the sort of the conventional wisdom is there's no obvious leader of the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. So if you're able to go out there and start talking about the party and who are we and what do we stand for, to Dennis's point, even if you're not running for president, he could sort of become a leading voice on the Democratic front.
Just down to our last minute, Jim. I mean, is this a slam dunk? It's just the only question is, will he get the support or not? I mean, because once again, we're a couple years out, but I mean, is this putting your egg in that little bowl and saying I'm absolutely in?
No, I don't think it is. I think it's more. It is more just about building a profile. I mean, I think certainly it's possible, right? And you look at it, you go, oh, he's a freshman senator. What is he going to do running for president? That's what people said about Barack Obama, and so.
And then he became president.
Right, and so this has happened before, but I think it's highly unlikely. I think that there are a lot of people in the Democratic Party that are jostling both for raising their profile and getting out there and kind of boosting the message, as well as trying to position themselves to run for president in 2 years. I think for someone like Gallego, I would look at it and say this is maybe triangulating for future, for maybe down the road.
Well, and as the old joke, always went, every child in this country can look forward to someday potentially being president, except somebody from Arizona, right? Bruce Babbitt has proved it. John McCain proved it. Rhodes proved it. There's so many people that tried it.
I think Mo Udall proved that.
Yeah, Mo Udall, man, he's the man who said that. Right? Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. We greatly appreciate your time today and the fact that you were willing to spend it with us. That will do it for this edition of Arizona Horizon. Ted Simon will be back on Monday. I'm Rick DeBrule, and on behalf of the entire team here at Horizon, we hope you have a great weekend.
Hello, I'm Alice Ferris, and we hope you enjoyed Arizona Horizon. For more than 40 years, viewers in Arizona have relied on Arizona Horizon for in-depth coverage of issues of concern to our community. Host Ted Simons has led insightful public affairs discussions on topics ranging from state politics